What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here. That's Andrew Ivins. This is the Cover 3 Podcast Recruiting Hour. Back with you for another week as we lead up till National Signing Day, that first Wednesday in December, plus a little bit more. Appreciate you guys enjoying all these episodes. Make sure you like and subscribe on the Cover 3 Podcast YouTube channel, especially if you are enjoying on the audio. Again, we do think this is a slightly better video product than audio, and probably more so than the normal pod because we do incorporate, a lot more video of recruits and while you may not know who a guy like Dylan Raiola is, you can picture him in your head. Some of the guys we're talking about, you probably can't actually visualize because you've never seen them before. We bring them to you, and we'd appreciate it if you want to hit like and subscribe there on this channel. Ivins, what's going on, man?
Not much, but hey, I was told in college that I have a voice for radio. So if they want to stick with the audio download, we'll take them. But I do agree, easier to put, a face to a prospect on the video side.
I like the golf shirt today. I was considering the blade collar underneath the blazer yesterday, and I was like, I don't know. Like, can you go suit jacket and blade collar polo? Like, I just ChatGPT told me it's okay, but I opted against it, and then it ended up being a big TV day yesterday in studio with James Franklin, kind of shockingly being out at Penn State. So I guess we need to start there. Being that we like to look at things from a recruiting and personnel slant here in this hour, how much of this can we really attribute to the recruiting at Penn State?
Well, Bud, I think that is it's been fascinating to see, this James Franklin era is over at Penn State and where the blame is going, right? As there's all these like diagnoses of what went wrong, and obviously the past 2 weeks, the results on the field, and then you could take it even further to Penn State and the big games. I don't think like recruiting was the issue here. And if you look at Penn State's past 4 recruiting classes, all of them are in the top 15. Now, none of them are in the top 5. None of them are in the top 3. So yeah, is there a little bit more out there? Sure. But Penn State is a program that is consistently churning out NFL talent. And the reason why there was so much expectations heading into this season, coming off a semifinal appearance in the college football playoff, is because they have a bunch of talent. They have a bunch of former blue chip recruits everywhere on the field. So to me, I don't think like recruiting is the root of the issue with Penn State. Yeah, could they get better in certain departments? Sure, we can talk that through, but I mean, James Franklin hit the pavement, right? His staff recruited. We saw them all over the country. Me and you located both in Florida. I mean, James Franklin is a regular down in the Sunshine State. We saw them try to get into Alabama. I mean, they have really tried to get to all different parts of the country. And I look at the roster, and I don't think it's like a talent issue.
I would agree with you. If you want to take a look at where his classes have finished, generally not in the top 10, more in that kind of 10 to 15 range pretty consistently, at least over like the last half decade, yet consistently produce top 10 type results. I understand if you think James Franklin is your Mark Richt, and maybe he is, right? Georgia pulled the plug and went after Kirby, and they thought they had their guy, and they stepped up their level of support for Kirby as well. I mean, they even changed like state laws to help him out. But there's also a strong chance that he was your Bo Pelini. And, like Nebraska would kill for Bo Pelini's results right about now. So we'll have to see where they go with that. Quarterback ended up being an issue this year, last year. Like they have Drew Aller, who has tremendous arm talent, just really couldn't always put it together. We know receiver has been an issue there as well. Franklin was an offensive guy when he came to Penn State from Vanderbilt by way of Maryland, where he was the OC, a long time ago now under Ralph Friedgen. But he was also like an absolute stud recruiter for that Maryland program back when, they would pull good classes and a couple like real freaks every year, which continued obviously at Penn State. Many Penn State guys have been all over your freaks list over the years, and that really continued. Like, what do we think about their quarterback and receiver recruiting moving forward? Is this a turnkey operation for whomever gets this job?
Well, I think a few things here, right? But there's like a narrative out there that quarterback development at Penn State was what sunk James Franklin. And I've kind of marinated on that a little bit overnight. I think like Drew Aller's kind of like your first round pick, right? Hey, so a 5-star, and this quarterback just didn't work out. And hey, the headman's going down with him. And obviously Drew's out for the rest of the year. But the more I thought about it, like, is quarterback really the issue for Penn State? If you look at the 3 previous starters for James Franklin there, all of them were selected in the NFL draft, unless I'm missing someone: Christian Hagenberg, Trace McSwirly, and Sean Clifford. And I think you can make the case that, like, Penn State squeezed the most out of all those guys, right? Like they got the most out of all of them. And obviously it hasn't worked out with Drew, but I don't know if like quarterback is the root issue. And we're going to see Ethan Grunkmeyer. He's next in. He's going to step in. Jackson Smolik's also on the roster. Like, those are 2 Elite 11 finalists. A lot of teams try to go after Ethan Grunkmeyer, who was a late bloomer coming out of Ohio. My big question is, when you look at the 2 deep, I think 4 guys on the offensive line are seniors. Obviously, the 2 running backs, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, they're gone. The top 3 receivers, while they might not be producing how some would like, they're all gone. And then obviously Drew, I would assume, is probably not going to be playing at Penn State in 2026, right? NFL, maybe another school. I don't really know the eligibility. Maybe he gets a medical or whatnot. So, I look at 2026, and it's going to be kind of a reset, a roster reset. And just given how Penn State has recruited the wide receiver position, I still don't think they have like that difference maker, an NFL guy there. So I think whoever comes in, number one, has to still be able to recruit at a very, very high level, but they also have to navigate the transfer portal. And they're going to, if they want to be competitive in 2026, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, they're probably going to have to go find some veterans out there. Because I look at the guys they signed in 2025, and I look at what they got committed here in 2026, what's still part of the class. I don't know how many of these guys are ready to go year one. So to me, they got to find that, I don't know, CEO that still prioritizes high school recruiting, primarily because I think football in the state of Pennsylvania is trending up, but still can go out and find the right parts in the transfer portal.
That makes a lot of sense. If you look at this thing, I mean, the schedule next year is extremely favorable for Penn State. I mean, like, this is a schedule. If you look at this Penn State 2026 football schedule, the guy coming in, man, he's set up to do something. Like, the defense should still be pretty strong. If they can put together a nice portal class, it's Marshall, at Temple, Buffalo, and then your 4 conference roadies are Maryland, Michigan, Northwestern, Washington. Like, that's not crazy easy, but I think if you're Penn State, you're expecting 2-2 there at the worst. And then Minnesota, Purdue, Rutgers, USC, Wisconsin come to Happy Valley. It's not unreasonable to think you could sweep those at home and be looking at a 10-2 type season heading back to the college ball playoff, which certainly, if you're going to fire a guy that brought you to the college ball playoff, that brought you to the Final Four last year, things had fallen apart for James. I understand that they feel like his tenure there had run its course. I'm not trying to be a James Franklin apologist. I really don't think there's much to apologize for. But man, you're right. If this guy does it right, if they hit the transfer portal running, if they maybe you get a coach who brings a quarterback with him, it's certainly not the motivation for making the hire. Like that's bad process. Like, yeah, we need to get a coach who's going to bring a QB with him. But yeah, like getting quarterback right here in this upcoming portal, if Grunkmeyer is maybe not the guy, maybe he is, would be really important here. As far as Penn State as a job, recruiting potential wise, how would you comp it to, let's just say, hypothetically, Nebraska, right? We're not going to waste our breath on the Iowa State discussion. It's a much better job than Iowa State. But as we know, Penn State athletic director Pat Kraft is very tight with current Nebraska coach Matt Rule. He actually hired him, I believe, when they were together at Temple. Rule has a lot of connections to the Penn State program as well. Do you think Nebraska, or how big is the gap between Penn State and Nebraska as jobs from like the recruiting and personnel perspective?
Well, I think they're similar, Bud, right? Because they're kind of like both isolated. But I would give Penn State a little bit of an advantage here. I think the brand resonates a little bit more with the high school recruits than Nebraska right now. And hey, maybe Dylan Raiola changes that in the next few years, but I've read a ton of fallout on this Penn State stuff. And like, no one is pointing out that Penn State like turned Abdul Carter, who was, back in 4-star prospect, into a top 5 pick. Like a lot of kids on the phones that they know who Abdul Carter is. And I think the other thing, Adidas is going to take over for or be the new apparel company for Penn State. I think that starts in 2026. I'm a guy that's, I don't know, involved or aware of what's going on with like the whole grassroots initiative. Adidas is going to pour a ton of money. We've seen it with Nebraska, which is an Adidas program. We've seen it at Texas A&M. I mean, Nebraska this past summer hosted a club 7-on-7 tournament in Lincoln and got 4- and 5-star recruits all around the country to come to this isolated campus and check it out. And what I think makes Nebraska and Penn State very similar is there are programs where you have to get the kids there before the official visit, right? They have to check it out. They got to see the whiteout. They got to see a game day atmosphere. So, I think with Penn State, I'll circle back to what I said. I think the football in that state is getting better and better. And really in the class of 2027, now it's super early, right? So, hey, the signing day coming up, that's 2026. That's all the seniors. I think 2027, the juniors, I think it's a golden age in the state of Pennsylvania. There's already 2 5-star prospects, Kemon Spell, the running back, and then offensive lineman Maxwell Hiller. We got 9 other guys already inside the top 247. And why I bring that up is, you still got to recruit locally in your backyard. And I think that's one of the main factors that would make, Penn State better than Nebraska, just because there are guys within the 3-hour drive, and both of them are going to have to recruit, across the country. So yeah, I think Penn State, there is certainly a leg up on Nebraska.
So you mentioned one position in particular, running back, man. Kemon Spell is a dude. Let's go ahead and talk about this awesome kind of running back group we have right now in the prep ranks. Tell us about Spell.
Yeah, bud. And I think me and you were talking about this over the weekend, right? You kind of watch college football right now. There isn't maybe a go-to clear-cut number 1 running back out there in the country. I mean, Ahmad Hardy at Missouri, Justice Haynes at Michigan. I think both those guys were the midseason All-Americans for CBS Sports, which came out earlier this week. To me, over the past few weeks, getting into the senior tape, getting into the juniors, I think there are like 4 running backs out there right now that can be the faces of offenses, guys that can carry teams to the college football playoff. And I think it starts with Kemon Spell. He is a 5-star running back in the class of 2027. This is a kid that had been committed to Penn State for well over a year. He goes ahead and formally decommits on Sunday after that James Franklin news, hits the wire. And this was kind of in the works, right? A ton of schools have been making a move on Kemon Spell, but how good is he? Well, here are the first 3 touches of his junior year. He had a 98-yard kickoff return. The next time he touched the ball, it was a 56-yard touchdown run. And then the next time, the third time, was an 80-yard touchdown. So I call him a jackrabbit mixed with a tank, right? He is like super elusive. Agility, it's all there. But when people get their hands on him, extremely difficult to get him on the ground. Everyone in the country's on this kid. But if we listed him, I just was watching his most recent game from last week. We could list him as like a safety linebacker. He's going to be a top 247 player for us. He is a football player, excellent on the 7-on-7 circuit when he's been asked to catch passes. So he's got that 3-down capability. We haven't settled on a comp for him just yet, but I want everyone to like picture Ashton Genty. I mean, this is a guy where, we're talking 25, 30 carries if you wanted to with Kemon Spell, and, Ohio State's in there. Michigan's in there. Notre Dame's in there. Brian Doan at 24/7 Sports kind of had a what's next for Kemon Spell on Monday. He's going to have no shortage of options.
I mean, when you watch him, I think that Gentry comp is really good. Like from a size perspective, I was thinking MJD, but the running style is certainly much closer to Gentry. I think that's a great pull, by you. But he's not the only one in the prep ranks right now who is really looking, as you mentioned, like a complete stud. How about the kid going to Michigan? Tell me about him.
Yeah, bud, and I'm calling my shot right now. So this is before all the college football media gets ahead of it. I think Michigan is going to have the best backfield in 2026. Now, everything needs to stay in place. There can't be transfers in or out. But think about it. You have Bryce Underwood, the true freshman sensation at quarterback. Justice Haynes is going to come back. Jordan Marshall is going to come back. And then, hey, here's this 5-star running back, Savion Hiter. But I was actually writing up his teammate, a wide receiver last week, and my eyes kept going to Savion Hiter. And it's like, hey, first run, 50-yard touchdown. Next run, hit 6 yards in the backfield, still manages to get 6 yards. I think he's got everything to be a featured back, and he's there in Virginia. Total package, power, speed, vision, creativity, hits the hole with plenty of juice, downhill momentum. Reminds me of actually Nick Singleton at Penn State. I think he's got some Nick Single to him. He was a 5-star running back. We'll see where he goes in the NFL draft. Young for the grade, right? So he's only 17 years old. This is a guy that could play another year of high school football if he wanted to. And then the testing profile on Savion is unreal. 4.17 in the short shuttle. He's gotten 22 feet in the long jump. And I know those are numbers that people are like, oh, what does that mean? What does that mean? For my studies, like, hey, short shuttle is like the number one indicator of future success at these running backs. And Savion's got one of the best in the class. So I think for Michigan, hey, you got your quarterback figured out. You got this run game, right? I think they're 19th nationally right now in rushing offense. And then, they're going to drop in a guy that should be able to contribute day one there in Ann Arbor.
Man, that is going to be a lot of fun for Michigan fans to watch. Today's a nice little bit of positivity for them, coming off that loss to USC. Next thing I want to ask you about here, Crowell, who's a commitment to Alabama. Is he related to Ezavier Crowell?
I do
really
not.
Good back from like 10 or 12 years ago. He was committed to Alabama for a bit.
I do not believe so.
Okay.
But I think the big message here is Bama's got another Bama running back coming down the pipeline. Yeah. I think they've been kind of missing that in recent cycles. And this is no shot at Jam Miller or any of these guys, but you go back to when Nick Saban obviously had Alabama humming. I mean, they had a dude at running back, and Ezavier Crowell, he's a kid that reclassified, right? So he was in the class of 2027. He has moved into the class of 2026. And right now he's running back number 4 for us, like number 71 overall, but he's going to finish much, much, much higher in the rankings. Thick cut, right? So he's like 210 pounds, but such an easy mover, lateral quickness, always finishing forward. This is a guy that can also catch the ball out of the backfield. I love his bend. I love his agility. As a senior, he's got like 3 full defender hurdles on the highlight reel. He is someone that I think is playing his best football right now. He's going to head to college with over 5,000 career rushing yards. Another one where like the testing profile is off the charts. And to me, Alabama, Jam Miller is going to be gone. I'm very familiar with the other running backs, having scouted them over the years. I think Crowell, if you're looking for an early candidate to be like, hey, potential freshman All-American, I think it's Crowell. Like, I think it sets up perfectly for him to come in. He's got that three down capability. And certainly, I think a name to know. Alabama got him to shut that recruitment down, but I don't think other schools are going to keep trying to chip away as we get closer to signing day.
Man, you said, when I watched that Missouri game, I was like, man, Bama's really committed to the run here. Obviously, Missouri has an elite pass rush. I don't think they want to drop back 40 times in Columbia. But God, it'd be nice if they had a kid who could actually break one. Like Jam Miller, due credit, was a workhorse for them in that ball game. It ended up getting himself knocked out there kind of late in the third or early in the fourth quarter. But if they just had a guy who could hit a home run like a Justice Haynes, then maybe that's a little bit more comfortable of a win for them when facing Missouri. All right,
But
another great battle.
well,
Or
but
go ahead,
he
yeah.
reminds me of Josh Jacobs from, what was that, like
Okay.
2018 Bama, first rounder in 2019. Like, some similarities, right? Just low to the ground run style, but those guys can do a little bit everything. And I think the biggest thing with Crowell and Jacobs is the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, right? You can put them in the slot. They're not just guys that are check down options.
No, 100%. All right. So last year we had a lot of hype leading up to the playoff game. It ended up not being much of a game at all. And that was a battle between Ohio State and Tennessee. And these two are actually facing off for a top flight running back here in David Gabriel-Georges in the 2027 class. I know he visited Tennessee over the weekend. What do you like about this guy?
Oh, well, Bud, from what I've heard through the college contacts, like, whatever this guy's number is, schools are going to pay for him, and he is a super unique story. Josh Jacobs, originally from Canada, and I think he's going to be the best Canadian-born running back maybe since Chuba Hubbard. Right, like, this guy is the real deal. He's in the class of 2027. Talking with Tom Loy, some other people at 24/7 Sports. A lot of rumors, hey, he might reclassify and jump into 2026. I don't know if that's going to happen. He's going to the Baylor school there in Tennessee, but man, he is everything you want, right? In a featured running back. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. He's got the speed, got the vision, got the agility. Recruitment is very unique because he is from Canada. And when he was at Tennessee over the weekend, read, according to GoVols 247, like, Tennessee needed a translator, right? French translator to kind of work with mom and dad and explain to them, hey, this is SEC football. But he's a kid where I don't think nationally a lot are talking about him, but man, against top flight competition this season, like best on best settings, he has delivered. We're calling him DGG as the nickname, David Gabriel-Georges, but man, he's what you want. And all four of these guys, I think, could be, that featured back for a college football playoff contender. And David Gabriel-Georges, he's one where, compared to the others, I think the recruitment's a little bit more open. But man, Ohio State, he's like Bo Jackson, but I think to another level. And we've seen what Bo Jackson has been able to do as a true freshman for the Buckeyes.
Can I suggest D2G?
D2G, I like that.
It kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit easier. I feel like there's some branding opportunities for him if you wanted to do that.
Well, we were playing off the DGB, Dorial Green. But D2G I like as well.
So we know from your research that reclassing, from a development perspective, from actually having success in college perspective, is not a lock, but more often than not, probably not ideal. There are some guys who have done it, who've had success. Now, granted, like, the financial component is big here too. If you reclass, you get paid a year earlier, right? Like, the most important, $500,000 you're ever going to make is the first. So from a financial component, totally get reclassing. Like, this guy's film looks like he's ready. I don't know if he needs another year of high school football. So I'm curious, how much do we think the reclass analysis you've done is applicable to the running back position?
Oh, I think running backs, it's the easiest position for true freshmen to get on the field. That's what it was in when we looked at the 2024 college football season. All the true freshman running back, and a lot of them transferred up. Ahmad Hardy, Fluff Bothwell, those guys went from the G5 ranks and up into Power 4. I said, hey, if I was a Power 4 program, I wouldn't pay big money for one of these running backs. I would just look to find the G5 guy that is having the best season and try to grab them. And we've seen that with Ahmad Hardy. Hey, Mekhi Hughes, maybe at Tulane, it hasn't worked out as well. I think it makes a ton of sense because, there's only so much tread for these running backs. And from what I've gathered with the reclassification, right, the ones that are having success right away in college, so that would be, the Ryan Williams, that would be the Malachi Toney, Antoine Redmond at Rutgers is a running back that reclassified. What we have found out, LT Overton at Alabama, is the kids that also were getting a ton of workload as freshmen in high school, right? And some of them even as eighth graders. Those are the ones that hit, right? Like, they have already played 4 or 5 years of high school football, and those are the ones that seem to be ready to go. And with the case with D2G, as you're calling him, Gabriel-Georges. He was Mr. Football in Tennessee last year. He's ready to go. Crowell's going to have scored close to 100 touchdowns and ran for 6,000 yards in high school. Like, those guys aren't one-hit wonders. They've been doing it year after year after year. And the thing I'm always looking for with these running backs, I said that short area quickness, are they home run hitters, right? Like, the kids that end up getting drafted are usually the ones in the youth league parks that are scoring touchdowns. Like, that never changes. You don't kind of just figure that out. Like, you got to have it from an early age. And I think all four of these running backs, they fit that category.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So, speaking of recruiting, so this is the recruiting hour here on the Cover 3 podcast, joined by Andrew Ivins, National Director of Scouting, Recruiting. Dude, you just do it all. Like, your title should just be like everything recruiting for 24/7 Sports. So, Curt Cignetti is a name who has come up on a lot of these very early hot boards for the Penn State job. Obviously, has done a tremendous job. It's hard to think of a bigger turnaround job someone has done. Maybe like DeBoer at Washington did a really good job. Chris Peterson, obviously, at Washington did a nice job. Maybe a couple of others. And we should acknowledge it's a little bit easier to do it now in the portal era, but still, like, really difficult overall to turn it around to this level at a program like Indiana, which just had their first top 10 road win in 46 years. So tremendous work by them to go on the road. And Oregon didn't give them that game. They went and took it, which to me was probably the most impressive thing, because Indiana normally, like, as a team, it doesn't beat themselves, and they went out there and just beat the other team. But as a recruiter, how would this fit at Penn State? Like, do we think this would work? Do we have any evidence that it would or would not work?
Yeah, but I can't figure out Indiana, and I feel foolish because last week on CBSSports.com, I profiled Mendoza and Dante Moore, and I was like, all right, one game starter, who you taking? And I was like, well, I'm taking Moore. And then it's like, rest of the season starter, who you taking? I'm taking Moore. And who you selected number one in the NFL draft? I'm taking Moore. And then it's like, to your point, Indiana goes out there, and it's not some fluke win. I mean, they take it to Oregon, which is a top 5 point of attack program. I can't figure Indiana out. I think Sig is elite game day coach, X and O's coach, because when I look at the roster construction, it's still kind of like puzzling to me. Like, they are so good in the transfer portal, and it's not like the high profile transfers. It's these other individuals. I mean, Indiana's starting 22 on Saturday, right? So the 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense. Only 2 of them Cignetti signed when he was at Indiana from the high school ranks. It has been all transfers that have come in and have fit right into that culture. So, yeah, I continue to see Cignetti's name linked to all these potential job openings. Hey, he would do great here. Hey, he would do great here. And I just wonder, what does it look like from a recruiting standpoint? What does it look like once you are in the big leagues? You're at a blue blood where everything revolves around player acquisition, 365 days a year. I just don't know what that looks like for Curt Cignetti. I really don't, Bud. And, kind of reminds me similarly of Kalen DeBoer when he left Washington and goes to Alabama. Now, DeBoer has figured it out here. We've seen him adjust and pivot. Initially when he arrived in Tuscaloosa, Alabama was still kind of recruiting the West Coast, and they didn't realize, hey, the Yellowhammer State, like, needs to be ground zero for us. And he has made that adjustment. I think Cignetti is a very sharp individual. I think certainly he could surround himself with the right people, but I do think that is the biggest question mark with him. If you put him at a Florida, if you put him at a Penn State where, most fans can name the top 5 guys in the recruiting class, what does that look like?
Man, I think if you have hope that Cignetti could recruit a high school level there, it is that he is someone who worked for Nick, has at least been around an elite recruiting operation. And I think if I was an Indiana person, I would say, yeah, you can't recruit at all. You don't want him, right? But if you're the Penn State person looking to make a hire, and if we think that Penn State's a better job than Indiana, which I do, although Indiana deserves a lot of credit for like teams came after their DC. They held on to them. Like, I'm sure teams came after Sig. They held on to him, at least, after last season. And like, they needed the portal, that thing. I don't think you could really build Indiana through high school to flip it this quickly. But I think I would just say, hey, like, I wouldn't doubt this guy. He pretty much wins wherever he goes. He finds a way. He does what is needed. And he has been around elite recruiting operations when he worked for Nick. I think he understands how that works. And I'm sure they're looking to get more into high school eventually there at Indiana, because what Indiana is going to run into is, and they definitely have money, but given Indiana's hit rate on the portal classes so far, like, that's going to become an issue too, where teams just sort of start saying, hey, if Indiana wants this guy, we need to take a second look. If Indiana wants this guy, maybe we need to match what Indiana's offering. It's going to become more expensive to recruit the portal at Indiana because they're so damn good at it. Like, there are certain G5 teams out there we know that some of these Power 5 teams kind of take a look at and they monitor. Okay, who did they just offer? Like, that's a staff that we kind of respect, and they do a good job repeatedly with certain areas, certain positions, and they kind of bird dog off them a bit. So, yeah, man, it'd be interesting to see if he could do it. Like, I don't want to definitively say that he can't, but certainly hasn't ever really shown the ability nor like the need to, I guess, right?
Yeah, but I just think it would look a little bit different than maybe some of these power brokers are accustomed to. And
sure,
we should bring up, like, okay, yeah, he's brought in a lot of transfers, but most of those kids at James Madison, were excellent evaluations by his staff. D'Angelo Pons is the name that comes to my mind, right? A kid that was at Chaminade Madonna Prep, playing with Jeremiah Smith, playing with CJ Bailey, kind of a forgotten individual, but hey, he was a state champion in track. Hey, he was a multi-year starter for a program that continues to win state titles. They get him to James Madison, bring him to the Big Ten. He's one of the top cover corners in that league. So, I just wonder, okay, like, are they going to be in it for the high-profile household names? Probably not. But where those recruiting classes would be very dialed, I think, would be player 5 through 20, right? The real, kind of bulk of your class. I think his staff has always done an excellent job. The guys he's brought with him, just making those talent IDs, finding guys with developmental traits. Because again, right, I said only 2 high schoolers that they signed while Indiana started against Oregon. I think there's like 8 guys from James Madison that were ready to go. Pons is one of them, but like Aiden Fisher, Elijah Surratt, Mikhail Karma there in the middle, all those individuals they found when they were at James Madison.
No doubt about it. So another Big Ten team that had a great win over the weekend is USC. I know you've been all over this. They're 5-1 now. They pretty much dominated the Wolverines down there in LA. They have done something repeatedly under Lakin, which is kind of assemble these big time classes over the summer. And a lot of us back east were like, yeah, it's going to fall apart. That's not really going to hold for whatever reason. There's reason to think this could be different this year. What have they built? And more importantly here, I think, why do we think that they have a real shot to keep it?
Well, Bud, I mean, they have the number 1 ranked recruiting class according to the 24/7 Sports Composite Team rankings. They've been sitting in the pole position really since the spring months, and they got a new GM. Chad Bowden comes in from Notre Dame, and you can instantly right away, you could tell there was a different philosophy, a different plan. USC started making LA and the surrounding areas a huge priority. They've continued to swing at some of these big time recruits in SEC country, but they've also cut bait. Xavier Griffin, our number 1 ranked linebacker, longtime USC commit. I think at some point USC realized, hey, likely not going to go our direction. Let's stop investing our resources here and let's pivot elsewhere, right? Let's not be left at the altar, which has been the case multiple times with other high-profile guys. So I kind of said a few months ago that this was setting up the schedule for USC to legitimately hold on to this number 1 ranked recruiting class if they could get some on-field results. It was a softer start to the schedule. They trip up at Illinois, and then now they take down Michigan. They're 5-1. We'll see how the next few weeks go, but this is what Lincoln Riley needed, because I think this recruiting class, 32 commits, right? 32 guys. It's been a while since we had these monster groups. USC is invested in high school recruiting, and I don't think it's a fraudulent class. I think there are guys that are
Yeah.
going to come in and we're going to see them in 2026. There is a ton of star power here, and I commend Lincoln Riley for making a change with the general manager and for them recalibrating and getting it together because this is shaping up where, foundational to make a college football playoff run if they can hold on to this group.
Man, that would be such a big deal for Lincoln Riley. You think about some of the shakeups going on right now in the Big Ten, Penn State, like USC could, and how big would it be for the Big Ten if USC is what they hoped USC was going to be? It just makes this league, we have the baseball playoffs going on right now. It makes their lineup so much deeper if you have USC back as like a legitimate national title contender. They have hit on quarterback. The receivers are really good. I love what we were talking about pre-show. The 7 offensive linemen, 8 defensive linemen committed, man. It's just like rebuilding the trenches there, establishing some competitive depth is a big deal for that program. And it feels like Lincoln Riley is finally getting this right. They have not figured out the travel road game stuff yet. Like they're demonstrably worse on the road. It's not just like a traditional home road type split, and that's one of the next challenges for that program to face. But if you watch them against Illinois, this is a team as currently constructed that they have some really nice top line pieces. And I think they do have some critical depth problems in some areas. In that Illinois game, they didn't have their left tackle. The center goes down, and it's like, oh man, okay. And like the backup center gets a pretty critical penalty on a real big gainer they had. It just kind of snowballed from there. They had a DB get lost to ejection, and then another guy got hurt, and you kind of saw Illinois poured on them a little bit, and the game ended up being probably closer than it was actually played out because Illinois fumbled at the goal line like 3 times, and USC scooped those up. But man, if this could be a deeper team, then they could be a team that is really threatening the college ball playoff on a much more consistent basis, which I think is what Trojan fans really want to see.
And again, I think the depth is coming, right? I got a chance to tour USC back during the summer months when we were out there for the Elite 11 finals. They are building a brand new football facility. It's going to be state of the art. It'll be interesting to see if this is kind of like one of the last ones grandfathered in with the rev share and where everything's going. Like these facilities, they might be a thing of the past, right? You got to pay the players. Money's got to go elsewhere. So USC, they're really excited about that. And I thought the other thing that stuck with me, having just interacted with some of the people inside those buildings, is hey, we can't rely on transfers. Like we can't. They're expensive. The hit rate with them sometimes isn't what you would want it to be, and that's why they're going to sign 35 guys from the high school ranks. And again, I think some of these individuals are going to be able to go right away. But it starts with tight end Mark Bowman. They beat out Georgia for him. They beat out Texas. Everyone in the country wanted Mark Bowman. He's another reclass, right? Another reclass, but he's been doing it for 3 years in the Trinity League there at Mater Dei High School. One of the best. Got to see him, bud, back in August. Mater Dei was down in Florida. He might be the best high school tight end I've ever scouted. Like Brock Bowers, we'll put him in that category. Tenacious blocker, receiving threat. The production isn't there because he plays in an offense that has a bunch of other high-end toys like Chris Henry, the Ohio State commit, Caden Dixon-Wyatt. So he isn't someone that gets the ball a ton, but to a trained eye, this guy does everything you want, right? Yeah. He's a technical blocker. I think USC is under the impression he's going to be able to come in and play right away. I think the same, right? Kenye Pepe, 5-star offensive tackle. That is their left tackle of the future, a kid out of IMG Academy. Let's not forget, bud, there used to be a time when Alabama got whoever was the top dog at IMG Academy, right? It was Tyler Booker. It was J.C. Latham. Well, Miami and Mario Cristobal, they went in there. They got Francis Mauigoa. We know how that's going for them in Coral Gables. Jordan Seaton, Coach Prime, he's at Colorado. We talked about him on the last show. That's a big hit. Kenye Pepe is next up, and Lincoln Riley able to go in there and get a kid that had original West Coast ties. So they're excited about him. And then I'll give you one more. And maybe the theme of this show is the reclassifications. Booby Feaster out of DeSoto High School in Texas. This is a kid that reclassified. but he reminds me of like the old guard of USC wide receivers. Like when I was touring their facilities, like I'm talking about these big wide receivers, single digit number, high white socks, black cleats, just game breakers on the outside. I think Booby Feaster fits that. Reminds me of Juju Smith Schuster, right? They're excited about this guy. Now it's going to have to all come together, right? He's going to have to buy in, but his ability to separate, guy that's 6'2", I mean, he can get deep, he can get vertical. They're really excited about him. And after digging into what he is doing in his now senior season, it's easy to see why, right? I mean, he's going to have to buy into the process. But man, post Mekhi Lemon, post Jacoby Lane, they got another guy that they really like in Booby Feaster. And he's someone that, could be making plays as early as 2026.
Man, you'd rather have first crack at him than let him get someone else's program and figure it out, right? Like if he doesn't figure it out, he doesn't figure it out. But like the upside there is pretty enormous. Yeah, but I don't often love like tight end prospects who play tight end in high school. I know you've done a lot of research on this. Just anecdotally, it looks a lot like a lot of your better prospects who end up being like top draft picks at the tight end position actually played a different position coming out of high school, and they just kind of ate their way into the tight end spot, or maybe they moved from defense, to offense. But man, Bowman, that is special. Like that is,
he's special. He's like polished, right? It's like very rare to come across these guys. Usually when you talk with college coaches, hey, looking for a tight end, do they inline block? No. Okay. All right. Well, find me one that inlines blocks. With Mark Bowman, I mean, you said it, bud. I think if we look at last year's NFL scouting combine, like 20 tight ends were there. 5 of them were high school quarterbacks. Usually it's an extremely late developing position. Guys are doing something else. They put on a ton of weight, and then they're kind of unlocked as these cheat codes. And if you think about it, tight end, you're asked to do so many different things. One of the most fun positions to scout and evaluate, but it's very, very hard to get right. And in the case with Mark Bowman, it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe he's not a multi-sport guy. Maybe he doesn't have 1,000-yard receiving season, but the game tape paints a different picture with him. He is polished, and I think he's going to be ready to go.
So let's go ahead and get here to the evaluation of the week. Well picked. This kid destroyed my Knowles. This is Desmond Reid of Pitt. 8 catches for a career high. I mean, it's better be a career high as a running back, catching 155 yards worth of passes. It seems like Pitt scouted that FSU's linebackers can't cover, just as Miami also figured out, and Virginia kind of exposed there on that Friday night in Charlottesville. Added 12 carries for 45 yards. His first game back from injury. He told Panther Lair, obviously Chris Peak does such a great job for us over there on our tremendous Pitt site. I took this game personal. I showed my face to their campus, and they didn't recruit me. We see this a lot from the state of Florida, man. Like there's so many kids that come out of this state, didn't get recruited by one of the big 3 there, goes to Pitt. And what year is he? I'm trying to think. Was this a find from our friend who used to recruit Florida so well and is now in the NFL?
This is actually Cade Bell, the offensive coordinator.
It was a Bell find. Okay.
At Pittsburgh, and we can get to Bell here in a second. But Desmond Reid, but it was funny. I was at a birthday party on Saturday night. A lot of sad Knowles fans, and they're like, "Man, that Desmond Reid kid." And I looked right at him. I said, "It was a lock that Desmond Reid was going to have a monster performance against the Seminoles." But the rule of thumb, if the big 3 is playing a kid that the big 3 overlooked and didn't offer, they almost always score a touchdown or have these huge big-time performances. I don't know if it's a chip on their shoulder. It applies to Miami. It applies to Florida, to Florida State. If they're playing a conference foe and there's a guy that, hey, none of them offered, like that guy's going to score a touchdown. Everyone remember that. And the next time you're watching the big 3, it will happen, right? Like those guys will score. And I love that quote from Desmond Reid. Bud, we actually had him as a 3-star prospect coming out of high school, out of Miramar High School. I remember seeing him at a 7-on-7 tournament at Florida. He was the best kid on the field that day playing wide receiver. The Gators didn't offer him either. But Cade Bell is the one that deserves a ton of credit here. Signed Desmond Reid to Western Carolina, brought him there to Pittsburgh. And really, Cade Bell, that entire Pittsburgh offense, guys that were just overlooked. And Ja'Carrion Turner, the other running back, he scored 2 touchdowns. Ralph Williams, the wide receiver. I mean, all these guys are from Florida. None of them were 4-star prospects. They're all 3 stars. Cade Bell, he has an eye. He's got a system. But I think if you're like a G5 school, someone in the American, hey, you're looking for a hot name that, number one, can recruit, but number two, can score a ton of points. I think Cade Bell, who is the son of former Florida coach Kerwin Bell, makes a ton of sense. Pitt right now, 30th nationally in scoring offense. They're 15th last year. So Desmond Reid is the eval of the week. And again, like you go back to his high school tape, over 1,500 yards rushing, 27 touchdowns as a senior, regional qualifier in the 100 and 200. The only issue was he was 5'8".
Which, hey, you know what? For every 5'8" guy who hits, there's a whole lot who don't. It's just the math of it. But tremendous job here by Cade Bell and Pittman. Like, if Golesh gets a job at USF, that might be my first call from the USF AD.
Would be mine. And he's worked at USF. Just going to put that out there.
All right. So let's get out of here on this one. I know this is a guy we mentioned before on Cover 3, and I wouldn't move on from Satterfield. They're doing a good job building this roster, and the guy in charge of building the roster is Zach Grant. They just routinely, like, Scott Satterfield on game day, don't love it. Scott Satterfield making hires, actually do kind of love it. Like, he also hired Tyson Veit away from Iowa State to fix that Cincinnati defense, and that's gone extremely well as well. But that Zach Grant was a pretty sharp hire. From him, came over from Ohio State. Bearcats 5-1. They are legitimately in contention to go to the Big 12 championship game to have their shot at Texas Tech, man. And I think he's got a nice little staffer. They routinely find guys. I mean, since he doesn't have a ton of NIL money to get it, but ultimately, like, they're on guys early, and I think they do a great job.
Yeah, but I thought this would be kind of fun to do in leading up to signing day, and obviously with the coaching carousel spinning, right? We all hear about these GMs, and not a lot of people can put a name to a face. So I thought, hey, let's start highlighting some of the GMs that are doing an excellent job. And Zach Grant, I think he deserves a ton of credit. You said it. Cincinnati right now 5-1, right? They are in the hunt to play for a Big 12 title. And a big reason why is because of Grant and his staff, what these guys are able to do. Carter Wilson, he's their high school evaluation guy. Jack Griffith, he's their portal evaluation guy. You look at that roster, a lot of transfers, some high schoolers mixed in there. I mean, Jeff Caldwell, he's their highest graded player according to PFF. He's a transfer from Linwood, their highest graded defender. Logan Wilson, he's a transfer from North Texas. Jake Golday, transfer linebacker from Central Arkansas. And then they, have defensive starters that they got from the high school ranks. And I think Zach Grant and his team, such a smart approach at Cincinnati. They can recruit in Ohio, but they look in the South. They look at powerhouse programs. They got a defensive starter from St. Francis Academy. They got a defensive starter from Phoenix City Central in Alabama. These guys do a great job. And Bud, why I want to give them a shout out is last year, their recruiting class, they lost kids to Florida, Ohio State, Michigan, Mississippi State, and Illinois, all right before signing day. It's going to happen again here in 2026. I think they're already going to lose their top 3 guys. But you know what? Like, they have a backup plan, right? Like, their plan B is ready to go. I think Zach Grant, does an excellent job of building that roster. And he's one of the most respected names in the entire industry. So, a lot of GMs get praise out there. Some of them are way more in the media than others. But, hey, Cincinnati's doing some really good things, and it starts with that personnel department.
Man, no doubt about it. I think we should do this a little more often. That there are definitely guys in the sport doing good work, and signing day doesn't always tell the tale. And you might counter, hey, like, they should go after only guys that they can afford to sign. But, like, ultimately, it does take that's a lot harder to do than you think. You want to get commitments from the best guys you can possibly get verbal commitments from, and you hope your boosters in your school come through to help keep those guys in the fold. Ivins, enjoy this, man. About a clean hour here, and we'll probably end it here. What are you looking forward to this weekend? Anything on deck for you?
Oh, hey, follow up on the GM thing. I was going to say, like,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to like GM hot boards on the 24/7 sports message boards. Like that's where my mind went with this because, we always see like the coordinator short list or like the assistant coaches. I want some of these GMs that are under the radar to get some love. I'm looking for, hey, we need to hire this guy, right? Like he's done an excellent job. What am I looking forward to this weekend? Bud, to me, like, I'm a group of 5 individual. I think the G6 bid situation is fascinating with the American Conference. So I got my eye on that. What about you? I mean, plenty to choose from.
I want to see if our old friend Barton, like they're favored over LSU. It's not super likely, but and there's an outside shot they could get to the playoff at Vandy. Like, how wild would that be, dude? So I want to see if they can pull that off. If they do, I mean, if you look at this Vandy schedule, it's not insane. They have a loss to Bama. They fumbled twice there, or 2 turnovers in the red zone. They host LSU. They host Missouri. You got to go to Texas. Who knows how Auburn's going to look, by November? Like that might just be a team with some chaos going on, or maybe they'll right the ship. Who knows? Kentucky is one you should win, and then they go to Tennessee. But man, if you could somehow win 3 of those 4, the LSU, Missouri, Texas, Tennessee, I think you're buying playoff tickets for a Vandy fan. So that's just kind of cool and a real. They would never be in the conversation in a 4-teamer, and this is kind of one of the examples of like where the 12 team. For all of its flaws, it does have so many more fan bases engaged much deeper into the season. I mean, we were talking today on Cover 3, like there's 25 or 30 fan bases that still have a legitimate, like not crazy type shot to get into the playoff. And that's exciting for me.
But I said this to someone over the weekend, like, I think we're all calibrated to think that like you have to go 12-0. Like that is the path to the playoff. Like you got to be 12-0, 13-0. And that's really not the case. Like 10-2, 9-3. When your team loses some of these games, everyone just writes them off and it's the end of the world and we got to fire the coach. And it's like, no, like parity's at an all-time high. You can get beat every single week. I was sitting there on Saturday night watching the SEC games, and it's like all these games are close. All these games can go either way. So I think we all need to recalibrate how we view a season. Like, you're going to slip up. You're going to if we're going closer and closer to the NFL model, guess what? In the NFL, you can lose every week, and good teams lose games as well. So, just something I've been thinking about.
No doubt about it, man. I think we'll wrap it here. Great chopping it up with you as well. And we'll see you next time.